Let's study again the word orders. Okay? So here, first word order, predicate before subject. Okay? So we say, mataba ang pusa. The cat is fat. Instead of, ang pusa ay mataba. Is ang pusa ay mataba wrong? No. It's also correct. However, it's not as usual or it doesn't sound as natural as mataba ang pusa. And let me just reiterate, right? So, the subject predicate order is more common in written Filipino than in conversational Filipino, where the predicate comes usually before the subject. Or, another way is using a verb. So you can say, natutulog ang pusa, literally, sleeping the cat, instead of saying, ang pusa ay natutulog, which is literally, the cat is sleeping. So, now, let's sum up again the use of the word I. What is I again? So, first, that we need to remember that I is equivalent to is, are, and was were, but is not really the verb to be, only used to perform the function of the verb to be. Second, it is hardly used in conversation. Okay? In the past tense, if you use I, it does not change. Remember in English, is becomes was, right? Not in Filipino. Why? Because again, I is not the verb to be. It doesn't have to change. So for example, ang pusa ay natulog. You just say, it simply means the cat slept. Ang pusa ay natutulog. The cat is sleeping. It remains I. What changes is only the verb. Okay? Now, let's talk about formal and more formal language. Okay? So, you have two words. Ho and oho show respect and formality. What is oho? Oho is yes, right? But we don't, so usually we just say oo, which means yes, but to show respect, you say oho, right? Opo also means yes. And then, but opo is more formal than oho. But what do? People just interchange that. They say sometimes oho, they say sometimes opo, it doesn't matter. Now, ho and po are the words that you insert into the sentences to show respect and formality. So, another way to use more formal language is to use plural pronouns. So, for example, you use inyo and ninyo in the most formal settings. Okay. Now, another thing that confuses a lot of learners is the word na. Okay, let's talk about the word na. So, when do we use the word na? Right? So, first, as a ligature or linker. So, it connects the modifier to the word being modified. Okay? Or, for example, to put it even more simply, you say, for example, remember we're talking about maganda na rosas, right? So, rosas na maganda, beautiful rose. So, you put the na in between your adjective and your noun, or the noun between the noun and the adjective. Okay? The modifier and modified can exchange places. When the modifier ends in a vowel, it occurs as the suffix nang. For words ending in n, nang replaces n. So, as you remember maganda? Maganda na becomes what? Becomes maganda. Okay. Now, let's look at examples. Pumasok ako sa maliit na gusali. Now, see, maliit na gusali, you have na between your adjective maliit, meaning small, and gusali, meaning building. Then, you can also say, pumasok ako sa gusaling maliit. So, in this case, you have gusali, and then you have na, and then you have maliit. Building, small. So, but gusali ends with the vowel I, and therefore gusali na becomes gusaling. Okay, let's look at another example. Pumasok ako sa malaking gusali dahil sa malakas na ulan. I went inside the big building because of the strong rain. So look, malaki na gusali you can make that into malaking. But look at malakas na ulan, strong rain. You cannot say malakasing ulan, right? You cannot combine that. Why? Because S is a consonant. So you cannot put malakas and na together. Okay. Let's go to another example. Pumasok ako sa gusaling malaki dahil sa ulang malakas. So look, gusali ends with an I, and then you have na, put together becomes gusaling malaki, building big, dahil sa ulang malakas. Look at ulang malakas. Ulan is rain, right? And then you have na. So it becomes ulan na malakas. But you do not say ulang with a double N and G. Ulan just becomes ulang with just one N and then G. Next. Here it's another, you have several other uses for the word na. So na also expresses the completion of an action or the immediate future completion of an action. It's similar to the English words already and soon, and we talked about this earlier, right? So we say, for example, let's just go back a little bit. We say, for example, have you eaten? Kumain ka na ba? Or kumain na ako, I ate already. Okay? So use of the word na. It's commonly used to help the verb with the suffix na ka to express the recent perfective tense in place of the verb have and the future form of the verb to express the immediate future. So for example, you say, nakapunta na ako sa Manila Metropolitan Museum. What does it mean? I have been to the Manila Metropolitan Museum. Or, have been na, I marker, Manila Metropolitan Museum. For example, you can also say, nakaalis na ang bus. Or nakaalis na ang bus. The bus had just left. Or had left na the bus. Another example, aalis na ang bus. The bus will leave soon. Or aalis na ang bus. We leave na the bus. Now, let's now study the word ba. When do we use ba? We use ba for yes or no questions. What is ba? It marks questions that can be answered by yes or no. And it changes its place in the sentence depending on the structure used. So, for example, in sentences where the focus is on the doer of the action or what we call as the actor, it comes immediately after the verb or the word na. It may or may not come after question words, and that's both are grammatically correct. So this should be question words, okay? When ba comes between a helping verb and the principal verb, it is formed with a linker or ligature. When there is a pronoun in the sentence, it comes after the pronoun, but after the principal verb. So that should be principal verb, not principal verb. Except with a pronoun, ka. Now let's look at example. So, aalis na ba ang bus? So look at ba, right? It comes after na, right? And then, kailan ba aalis ang bus? Or, we can just say, kailan aalis ang bus? Another example. We can say, aalis ka na ba? So look at ba there. Ba is at the end of the sentence. Or, we can say, aalis ba sila? So, now, to sum up. So the question is, why do we study grammar? So first, we study grammar when we write and we edit text or when we speak, right? Second, insights into linguistic structures. 3, comparative analysis. And 4, of course, self-confidence. When we speak, it's important to know grammar. Sit. That was really long.
Capture it.
How long was